Welcome back to another deep dive on The Explainer. Today, we're getting into something absolutely fascinating. Whether you're trying to figure out your own mind a little bit better, or you're just trying to understand how a loved one operates, we are unpacking the world of highly sensitive people. We're going to break down their daily struggles and eventually reveal the incredible superpowers hiding right behind those challenges. Let's get started.
So, let me ask you this right off the bat. Do you consider yourself a deep thinker? Do you feel things much more intensely than the people around you? Maybe you've always felt like your emotional dial is just turned all the way up to a blaring 10, while everyone else seems to be effortlessly coasting along at a cool 4 or 5. It's a really profound, vibrant way to experience the world for sure, but it can also be incredibly overwhelming.
Just take a breath and let that sink in for a second. If that resonated with you, you gotta ask yourself, are you part of that small percentage of people who are highly sensitive? If your answer to both of those questions is a resounding yes, well, I have some great news for you. You aren't weird, you aren't broken, and you are definitely not alone. You actually belong to a very specific, scientifically recognized demographic.
Okay, let's dive into this. A highly sensitive person, or HSP for short, is basically someone who's naturally predisposed to process and perceive information on a much deeper level than most. And notice that word there, predisposed. This isn't just some fleeting mood or a phase you go through. Your brain is quite literally wired to take in more data from your environment than the average person does. It makes you highly perceptive, empathetic, intuitive, and remarkably self-aware.
The numbers on this are actually super interesting. 20%, that's just 1 in every 5 people who possess this trait. Basically, statistically speaking, there was an HSP in almost every single awkward group project you've ever been a part of. If you're an HSP, this perfectly explains why you might have spent your entire life feeling slightly out of place. You're operating on a completely different frequency than 80% of the room. Now, because feeling and processing things more intensely has some definite downsides, we're going to break down the struggles of his deep processing into 3 clear categories.
All right, let's look at our first major category, the sensory toll, and how HSPs experience the physical world.
And this brilliantly illustrates the massive divide here between an HSP and the rest of the world. Society generally tells us that popular fun means going out to a packed bar for the big game, hitting up loud concerts, or wading through massive festival crowds. Sounds pretty great to most folks, right? But for an HSP, all that commotion, all that sensory input, the loud noise, it leads straight to overwhelm and a complete personal shutdown. So, if your friend bails on a loud club at the last minute, they really aren't being boring or Debbie Downer. They're just actively practicing self-preservation to protect their own sensory limits.
But the physical tax goes even further than that. First off, studies show HSPs flat out require more sleep just to function properly. Without it, the crankiness and grogginess hit them with the force of a freight train. Second, they experience incredibly strong visceral reactions to violence and cruelty. Even if they logically know a horror movie is entirely fake, watching gore causes deep, unsettling physical discomfort. And finally, simply navigating a new, unfamiliar environment, like say, trying to find the restroom in a brand new, busy restaurant, is incredibly mentally taxing. Their brain has to map and process a mountain of new sensory data before they can finally just relax and eat.
Moving right along to our second theme, navigating the social minefield, focusing on interpersonal dynamics.
Because an HSP notices absolutely everything, they generally have spot-on perception and read nonverbal cues brilliantly. But this also means they constantly overanalyze tone. They can easily make a mountain out of a molehill from just a single sigh or a sideways glance. Furthermore, because they're so gentle and soft-hearted by nature, even well-intentioned criticism or a slightly raised voice during an argument can crush them deeply. And perhaps the toughest social struggle of the whole bunch, an HSP will frequently override their own personal boundaries and say yes to favors they really don't want to do, simply to avoid letting someone else down.
This brings us to a really crucial comparison that addresses the 13th major struggle from our source text, being deeply misunderstood by society. A lot of people mistakenly treat high sensitivity like it's a voluntary choice. They think you can just, turn it off or toughen up, as easily as picking out a meal for dinner. But as we established earlier, it is an inherent, unchangeable trait. It's a natural predisposition. You literally can't just choose to stop processing the world deeply, any more than you can choose to change your eye color. That leads us right into our third category, the internal pressure cooker, dealing with emotional exhaustion. Frequent absorption and reflection of other people's emotions feels like a constant emotional roller coaster. It is utterly exhausting.
Being highly empathetic means you aren't just noticing that your coworker is sad or your partner is stressed out. You are actively absorbing those feelings right into your own body. If you're out all day around different people, you're practically carrying the emotional weight of everyone you interacted with by the time you finally get home.
And man, those internal hurdles just keep coming. First, HSPs have a very hard time letting go. Emotional pain, whether that's a harsh insult from a boss or a bad breakup from months ago, it tends to linger much longer because they process it so thoroughly. Second, time pressures and tight deadlines cause serious distress. They absolutely hate having to rush or juggle several tasks at once. They vastly prefer singular focus. Finally, no one is harsher on an HSP than themselves. They hold themselves to impossibly high standards and agonize over the tiniest little mistakes.
So, because of all this internal friction and deep processing, we arrive at an absolute truth. Solitude is a strict requirement to rest and recover. It's not a luxury, it is a physiological need, much like breathing. Yet, this is often a massive struggle because friends and family just fail to understand it. They'll keep texting constantly or refuse to give them space when an HSP desperately needs quiet, undisturbed alone time to just recharge their totally drained batteries.
Which brings us to our final section, the silver lining, the darkness to the light.
So, the crucial point is captured perfectly in this quote from the source text. These issues are simply the darkness to the light, with the light being your insightfulness, artistic sense, and open-minded nature. I absolutely love this framing. It takes everything we just talked about, the sensory overload, the emotional exhaustion, the overanalyzing, and correctly identifies them as the necessary counterparts, the darkness essentially, that's required to sustain the beautiful, brilliant light of a highly sensitive mind.
Think about it. Because you feel deeply, you have a massive capacity for compassion and understanding. Because you notice absolutely everything, you are highly emotionally intelligent and self-aware. That depth of processing fuels incredible creativity and passion. Ultimately, possessing these traits means your very presence makes this world a significantly kinder, more deeply felt place, and that is your true superpower.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. If 20% of the population processes the world this deeply, how much richer, more empathetic, and more innovative would our society be if we stopped telling highly sensitive people to toughen up and actually started listening to what they perceive? Do you, or maybe someone you know, relate to any of these struggles? I'd love to hear your personal experiences with HSPs, so please share them with us. Thank you so much for learning with me today on The Explainer.